In the early hours of April 26, 1986, the world changed. What the Soviet government would describe as a minor incident was, in truth, one of the most catastrophic nuclear disasters in human history. But behind the official reports and televised apologies, there's a darker version of this story, one written in secrecy, buried in classified files, and whispered among those who were there. This is not just about radiation. This is about control, experiments, and things that were never meant to come to light. That it all started before the explosion. Reactor 4 wasn't just a power generator, it was part of something else. Locals reported strange noises at night, mechanical humming, alarms that weren't supposed to sound, and security levels that exceeded anything seen at other nuclear plants. Some workers even spoke of sealed-off sectors below the reactor, where access was limited to military personnel. What were they protecting? Or experimenting with? One of the secrets buried under decades of denial is what insiders call the Black Protocol. It was a contingency plan drafted by high-ranking Soviet officials that anticipated a disaster like Chernobyl. But here's the disturbing part: the protocol wasn't focused on protecting civilians, it was about controlling information. Evacuation procedures were delayed on purpose, not out of incompetence, but to ensure the chain of command could manipulate the story before it reached the West. Entire families were exposed to lethal doses of radiation, not because of chaos, but because of calculated silence. Then, there's the anomaly with the reactor itself. Some of the last workers to see the core before the explosion reported seeing something strange, patterns of glowing red light just before the detonation. One technician described it as a pulse, like the reactor was breathing. Was it just the build-up to the explosion, or something else? Some survivors believe that secret electromagnetic tests were being run, tests that may have destabilized the core. And if that's true, then the meltdown wasn't just an accident. It was the result of pushing science beyond its limits, in the name of military advancement. Among the strangest and most unsettling rumors to surface involves what came to be called the Phantom Men. These were figures seen by some of the first responders, tall, silent silhouettes standing in the distance during the chaos of the fire. At first, they were dismissed as hallucinations caused by radiation poisoning. But the stories kept coming. Firefighters, paramedics, even high-ranking officers described the same vision: dark humanoid forms, motionless, unaffected by the chaos, simply watching. Some speculated they were Soviet agents in protective suits. Others weren't so sure. And then there's the matter of the animals. After the evacuation, Pripyat was supposed to be empty. But reconnaissance teams reported packs of dogs that didn't behave like dogs. Glowing eyes. Silent movement. No barking, no fear. A few scouts went missing during those early days. Their bodies were never recovered. The official records say wildlife mutated due to radiation exposure. But eyewitnesses tell a different story, of aggressive, coordinated behavior, as if something had changed them on a fundamental level. Was it evolution accelerated? Or were these creatures part of experiments no one ever intended to talk about? Perhaps the most horrifying revelation came from within the walls of Hospital No. 6 in Moscow. It was here that the most severely irradiated workers were treated, if treated is the right word. Some of their medical files were locked away for decades. Those who managed to see them claim they don't look like normal charts. There are diagrams, codes, notes written in shorthand, and references to something called Project Elmira. No one knows what that is. But one nurse who worked at the hospital described hearing screams coming from behind lead-line doors. Screams that didn't sound human. But here's the question that keeps people awake at night: why was Chernobyl so vulnerable in the first place? A reactor with known design flaws. A stress test pushed beyond safety limits. And a night shift team allegedly unprepared for such risks. Was it gross negligence, or a test in itself? Some researchers now believe that the explosion may have been a stress simulation, one meant to measure disaster response under real pressure. If that's true, it means lives were lost not because of an accident, but because someone wanted to see what would happen when it all went wrong. 30 years later, Chernobyl is still haunted, not just by radiation, but by questions. Why were high-level military officials seen near the exclusion zone days before the explosion? Why were American satellites jammed in the hours that followed? And what happened to the original tapes from Reactor 4's surveillance system? They say the truth is buried beneath tons of concrete and steel. That the sarcophagus sealed more than just radioactive debris. That deep underground, something else is still alive. Perhaps it's just conspiracy. Or perhaps we've only scratched the surface, because in Chernobyl, not everything died, some things were born. Sleep well if you can, and see you in the next video.